Ladies and gentlemen, let's listen to the national anthem of Poland, performed by the choir of our university, Muzyka Viva, conducted by Professor Marek Gandecki. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and honor to welcome all of you at the formal meeting of the Poznaniu University of Economics and Business Senate on the occasion of awarding the honorary doctorate to Professor Michael Porter. I am pleased to welcome Professor Michael Porter from Harvard Business School, the most important person during our ceremony. Please join me in welcoming Professor Michael Porter. I am pleased to welcome also Professor Marian Gorynia, the former rector of our university, initiator of awarding Professor Michael Porter the honorary doctorate. During his term in 2015, the Senate conferred the degree of Dr. Honoris Causa on Professor Michael Porter. Professor Waldemar Frąckowiak, promoter of the conferment of the honorary degree. The two reviewers of Professor Porter's achievements, Professor Filip Gugler and Professor Krzysztof Obłój. I would like to welcome Mrs. Katarzyna Kierzek-Koperska, the Deputy Mayor of Poznań. Professor Andrzej Lesicki, Rector of Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznań. Professor Andrzej Kaleta, Rector of Wrocław University of Economics. Professor Józef Orczyk, Rector of WSB University in Poznań. Former rectors of our university, Professor Bohdan Gruchman and Professor Witold Jurek. Let me welcome all vice rectors, deans and vice deans from universities in Poznań, Łódź, Toruń, Warsaw, Wrocław, Zielona Góra. I'd like to welcome the board members of the MTP group, the organizers of the Global Marketing Conference, where Professor Michael Porter was a special guest. Let me welcome Przemysław Trawa, Chairman of the Board, Elżbieta Reske, Vice Chairman of the Board, and Tomasz Kobierski, Vice Chairman of the Board. I'd like to welcome Dr. Andrzej Bird, Dr. Honoris Causa of our university. I can't see him yet. I'd like to welcome representatives of the companies from the PUEB Partner Club, all academics and students from our university and other universities, all the other persons, friends of our university. I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you very much for being here for this special event. Ladies and gentlemen, respecting the university's beautiful tradition of awarding the honorary doctorate to outstanding personalities, today this respectable group will be joined by Michael Porter. Michael Porter is a university professor at Harvard Business School. Widely recognized as the father of modern business strategy, Professor Porter is a renowned economist and, according to Fortune, quotation, the most famous and influential business professor who has ever lived. A leading authority on company strategy and strategic approaches to societal problems, Professor Porter's work is internationally recognized in governments, corporations, and academic circles. Author of 19 books and more than 130 articles, Professor Porter is an advisor to countries, businesses, and non-profit organizations around the world. His outstanding achievements have been described in the book specially prepared for this event and will be briefly presented in the speeches during our ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to ask Professor Marian Gorynia, my predecessor, rector from 2008 to 2016, to present the resolution of the PUEB Senate in this matter.
Ladies and gentlemen, the text of the resolution of the Senate of the Poznaniu University of Economics and Business, number 78 of 22nd May 2015. At the request of the Council of the Faculty of International Business and Economics and the Council of the Faculty of Management of the Poznań University of Economics and Business, after reading the reviews prepared by Professor Krzysztof Obluj and Professor Filip Gugler, the Senate of Poznań University of Economics and Business decides to confer the title of Doctor Honoris Causa of the Poznań University of Economics and Business to Professor Michael Porter in recognition of his outstanding scientific achievements and contribution to the development of economic sciences in the field of microeconomics, theory of strategy and competition, explaining the modern processes of competition in the local, national, and global economies and in social life, theory of competitive advantage of nations with the cluster theory, and in recognition of the creative influence of the professor on business practice and economic policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rector Gorynia. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like now to kindly request Professor Waldemar Frąckowiak, the promoter of the scientific record of Professor Michael Porter, to give the laudatory speech. Professor Frąckowiak, please take the floor.
Thank you. Your Magnificence Rector, esteemed members of the Senate, distinguished Professor Porter, ladies and gentlemen, doing astounding things that set new directions for important public affairs is a rare privilege enjoyed by extraordinarily gifted people. These people undoubtedly include Professor Michael Porter, whose rich work, as well as impact on practical life, is really hard to overestimate. For these reasons, the Senate of the Poznaniu Uniwersytet of Economics and Business has decided to bestow on Professor Michael Porter its highest award, the degree of Doctor Honoris Causa, in recognition of his great contribution to economic sciences as well as social and economic life. Most of those present here are familiar with Professor Porter's extensive and multidimensional work. As it is impossible to present here all of Professor Porter's achievements, let me just briefly mention what I find to be the main aspects of his activity, its roots, and its numerous benefits. Professor Porter has a comprehensive educational background. In 1969, he earned a BCE with honors in aerospace engineering and mechanical engineering from Princeton University. In 1971, he received an MBA with honors from Harvard Business School, and in 1973, a PhD in business economics from Harvard University. In 2000, he was named Bishop William Lawrence University Professor, which is the highest recognition that can be awarded to a professor at Harvard Business School. In 2001, Harvard Business School and Harvard University jointly established the Institute for Strategy and Competitiveness, headed by Professor Porter, to enable him to continue research on theory of strategy and competitiveness. If we trace the development of Professor Porter's work, we can notice that it follows a long-term research program. His earliest work focused on pioneering research into contemporary competition in industry and corporate strategy. Referring to microeconomic theory and a lot of empirical research, he comprehensively elucidated the nature of sectoral competition and choices made by companies in order to gain a sustainable competitive advantage. Against this background, Professor Porter rigorously laid out the essence of corporate strategy, which he sees as occupying a unique strategic position different from that of our rivals. This kind of strategic competitiveness is expected to help us achieve higher rates of return by focusing on profits rather than on market share, and compete through innovation rather than imitation. These findings were developed in many books and articles. Professor Porter's milestones include, in particular, the article How Competitive Forces Shape Strategy, 1979, and Competitive Strategy, 1980, a book published 63 times in 19 languages, which shows techniques for analyzing industry sectors and competitors. The concept of and tools for developing a competitive advantage are presented in another book, Competitive Advantage, 1985, which has had 38 editions. Professor Porter has been investigated these issues further until now. Inspired by his appointment in the Industry Competitiveness Committee by President Ronald Reagan, Professor Porter laid the foundation for a new theory to explain the nature of and microeconomic basis for the competitiveness of nations and regions, as well as the sources of the economic prosperity, in a book titled The Competitive Advantage of Nations, 1990. He demonstrated that today its level is determined by efficiency, the value produced per unit of labor or capita, whose goal is to improve citizens' standard of living. Professor Porter and his team regularly publish the results of research into these issues in the Global Competitiveness Report, which features an annual competitiveness ranking of more than 120 countries. Professor Porter attaches fundamental importance to the concept of clusters, which he introduced in 1990 as part of a rhombus showing the competitive advantage of nations. The concept of clusters has found wide practical application. The cluster mapping project created by Professor Porter provides comprehensive statistics concerning US economic regions and operating clusters. The methodology is used for the same purpose in 27 European Union countries. Professor Porter also investigates the issue of innovation, which is clearly related to the above topic. At present, he's running a worldwide research program devoted to competitiveness, including the innovativeness of the US economy and its global implications for the world economy. Professor Porter successfully transfers his findings about principles of competition and strategic management to the social realm, in particular to healthcare, the natural environment, distressed urban communities, and corporate social responsibility. In the 90s, Professor Porter initiated a public debate by putting forward the idea that progress in environmental protection and economic competitiveness do not contradict but complement each other. What is known as the Porter hypothesis has resulted in more than 100 research papers and, more practically, in companies' new attitude to the natural environment and the scope of regulations. Corporate philanthropy and social responsibility are Professor Porter's next important research areas. In his subsequent papers, Professor Porter demonstrated how corporations should implement the idea of shared value creation as part of social responsibility. He also provides a basis for building the strategies of non-profit foundations and other philanthropic organizations. Among other things, Professor Porter developed the conceptual framework underlying the new Social Progress Index, first published in 2014, which covers 132 countries. Professor Porter has also founded and co-founded 4 non-profit organizations. The crowning achievement of Professor Porter's diversified research is a book on competition, 2008, an extensive collection of the most important of his previous studies, supplemented by several new texts devoted to the latest research issues that he is exploring. The book gives a multidimensional picture of the author's exceptionally rich work, ranging from competition and strategy in business through the competitiveness of locations, nations, and regions to social problems. This extensive and complex subject matter, however, constitutes one whole based on a system of interrelated concepts, methods, and analytic tools, whereas the link that connects them is competition and strategy. We have every reason to state, therefore, that Professor Porter is the author of a new theory of modern competition, one based on new paradigms and a holistic approach. The theory is coherent and universal. It allows us to comprehend today's processes of rivalry and development both within the business world at the local, national, and global level, and outside it in public and social life. Professor Porter has considerable educational achievements as well. His research work provides a basis for educational programs on competitiveness and strategy. Of particular value is Microeconomics of Competitiveness, a program open to all HBS students, which is run at over 80 renowned universities around the world. Another program with a worldwide reputation is the new CEO workshop for newly appointed CEOs of major US and international corporations. In the US and outside it, Professor Porter plays important public roles, including advisory ones. He advises large corporations, the US Congress, public institutions, and the governments of many countries in Central and South America, Asia, Africa, Europe, and Oceania. Professor Porter has won numerous awards and honors. He has received 21 honorary doctorates from universities in Europe, North America, as well as Central and South America, and has also been elected in many honorary societies. His great creativity and unusual ability to combine various areas of economics, management, and finance testify to Professor Porter's extraordinary expertise. The spectacular results of his work have a contextual framework. On the one hand, he derives inspiration from the work of Alfred Marshall and his microeconomic theory, and further on from Joseph Schumpeter's innovation theory. On the other hand, the demand that appeared during the Second Industrial Revolution in the US for a new industrial policy provided an impetus for academic reflection on competition and management in the new conditions. Given this context, we can detect in Professor Porter's work the economic philosophy of Adam Smith, father of classical liberal theory and business ethics, and precursor of research into the wealth of nations. Based on the above, Professor Porter integrated existing fragmentary knowledge, added new ideas, restored the importance of those abandoned by the neoclassical current, and on this basis developed a new holistic theory of competition and strategy, combining three groups of key phenomena: leadership in the strategic process, the firm as a set of resources and activities, and strategy with its economics. Such an approach resulted in a qualitative breakthrough which confirms Hegel's idea of dialectical transformation of quantity into quality. To conclude, let me try to identify the key messages that remain particularly prominent in Michael Eugene Porter's work. They are universal, but they can also serve as recommendations for Poland and its economy. Professor Porter expresses his conviction that competition will continue to develop and to disrupt the balance, thereby becoming an important source of prosperity. By thinking so, Professor Porter returns to the roots of the Mediterranean civilization. This is where the idea originated that alit emulatio ingenia, rivalry nourishes talents, talents for making a change for the better. However, Professor Porter does not perceive development as a one-factor process in which only competition plays the role of demiurge. He emphasizes that capitalism is a system of interrelated cooperation and competition, and treats cooperation as a sine qua non for the development of clusters, as a new way of approaching the national, regional, and local economy. The third message concerns the role played in the economy by the state. Professor Porter does not subscribe to the view that government should be directly involved in helping or protecting the economy. On the other hand, he rejects the free market idea that the economy should be led by an invisible hand. He expects government to act as a catalyst that stimulates companies to increase their aspirations and competitive effectiveness. The stronger the competition and the larger the number of equal rivals in a sector, the greater the potential for innovation. Conversely, if the domestic market is dominated by 2 or 3 champions, government protection and subsidies are greater. Professor places on government the responsibility for preparing and implementing a long-term program of economic development and reform to improve the quality of business environment, including macroeconomic incentives that stimulate companies to increase efficiency. One message is very important as well. One of the main aims of a nation is to increase its citizens' prosperity and keep it at a high level. Consequently, according to Michael Porter, the perception of national competitiveness merely as generating a trade surplus or achieving trade balance is mistaken. Increasing export at the expense of lower wages and weak domestic currency while importing high-tech products which domestic manufacturers cannot produce competitively may result in trade balance or even a surplus, but will lower people's standard of living. I am convinced that these ideas are worth bearing in mind and implementing in our everyday practice. Professor Michael Porter's manifold accomplishments have been presented here only in broad outline. However, all the topics discussed point to the definite conclusion that Professor Porter is a figure that has a profound intellectual influence on academic discourse and business practice globally. Accepting Professor Michael Porter into the community of Poznaniu University of Economics and Business by bestowing on him the highest academic award is a momentous event for the university and a recognition of his exceptional academic and practical achievements. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Frąckowiak, for your laudatory speech. Thank you very much. I would like to now request Professor Philippe Gugler from University of Fribourg, the reviewer of the scientific record of Professor Michael Porter, to give the speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to be invited to deliver a laudatio at this ceremony awarding the title of Doctor Honoris Causa to Professor Michael Porter. It is also a challenge to summarize in a few minutes the outstanding achievement of a scholar who generates 240 million entries when you write his name in the search engine Google. And to be noted that Michael Porter is the 5th most cited scholar of all time across all disciplines, according to Google Scholar. Yes, introducing Professor Michael Porter to this distinguished audience, gathering economic scholars, business managers, and governmental representatives is a little bit like introducing Pope Francis to the cardinals at the Sistine Chapel. Anyway, as it has been said, Michael Porter is a university professor based at the Harvard Business School and director of the Institute for Strategy and Competitiveness. His early research focused on company strategy and industry competition. He developed and proposed not only a rigorous framework to understand the real drivers of competitive forces shaping industries, but also the key strategic tools allowing firms to achieve high economic performance. He published outstanding books and articles in this field, and these books are taught in almost every business school and are extensively used by practitioners around the world. His model of the 5 forces is a leading academic contribution in order to properly understand how markets operate in specific industries. He has always incorporated new ideas and continuously adapted his research to the latest technological and societal trends shaping industry's activities and firm strategies, such as, more recently, the digital economy. Michael Porter is also a pioneer in the field of economic development and competitiveness. His major contribution focused on macroeconomics determinant of region and nations' competitive advantages. His book, The Competitive Advantage of Nations, is the essence of his approach that has driven thousands of scientific articles from scholars persuaded by his new ideas. And Michael Porter introduced the famous diamond model. This model was developed in order to respond to a question which is at the core of the reflection not only of economists, but also of governmental officials. Why does a nation achieve international success in a particular industry? Michael Porter's research interests are driven by his willingness to improve social welfare at all levels of the society. His approach on the macroeconomics driver of prosperity demonstrates, inter alia, that economic success is not achieved at the detriment of the society, for example, through low salaries or environmental damages. He also developed a major model of one of the great issues of our societies, healthcare policy. As it has been said previously, over the last few years, Michael Porter has devoted pioneer ideas on the concept of created shared value. World-leading companies are already applying this concept, and numerous new firms are implementing this concept each year. He also introduced the Social Progress Index, as it has been said previously. Michael Porter's research and involvement constitute a tremendous contribution to the scientific community, to the education institution, to the firm, association, and government institution. These reflect Michael Porter's invaluable involvement in education. He's an outstanding teacher for those students who were fortunate enough to attend his courses. Michael Porter promotes and encourages education all over the world. In 2002, he has created the Microeconomics of Competitiveness Network, comprising more than 140 universities, including the Poznaniu University of Economics and Business. Today, around 40,000 students have been able to attend courses on macroeconomics of competitiveness all over the world. Michael Porter is qualified as an economist, a researcher, teacher, author, advisor, and speaker. I couldn't end this presentation without evoking the warm, open-handed, and altruistic person who expressed empathy and real interest to every people interacting with him, colleagues, students, staff. His generosity, translated in his main research orientation, creates tremendous leverage effects on those who have the chance to collaborate with him or simply to approach him. His simplicity is also one of his recipes to transmit his knowledge and to offer the best opportunity to understand complicated issues that he has been able to formalize in a very accurate way. To sum up, Professor Michael Porter is one of the world's leading economists. His impact in the scientific world as well as the society is invaluable. His scientific and human value is incomparable. And I congratulate the University of Economics and Business of Poznań for granting him the Dr. Honoris Causa. I'm convinced that the presence of Michael Porter here today will inspire the scientific community of your university. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Gugler. Now I would like to ask Professor Krzysztof Obły from University of Warsaw, who was also reviewer of the scientific record of Professor Michael Porter, to give the speech. Professor Obły, the floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here today, and I would like to thank the Rector and the Senate for this invitation and the opportunity to attend this ceremony. This is a unique and an important ceremony, but I would like to start it on a personal and a bit lighter note. I have known Professor Porter for many years, so this relation is not symmetrical. His book, Competitive Strategy, was the first academic English book that I bought in 1980, later early 81, when attending the conference in Norway. And the reason was very simple. It was the only strategic management book I wanted to have on my own at this time. I paid for it an equivalent of over 1 month's wage at the University of Warsaw, which put quite a serious dent in my family budget, but it was worth it. Now, there are many good researchers in our field. There are many people that ask novel questions, develop new perspectives, mix in an interesting way questions and methods. But there are not many, and there will not be many people and researchers who make a real difference. Now, researchers that change the rules of the game, researchers capable of developing new, consistent, promising theories or frameworks, researchers that others follow. Professor Porter is one of these rare individuals for 3 good reasons. Now, first, he had the will and courage to question existing paradigms and perspectives and shape new, promising theoretical propositions. This is rare. There is natural, normal, and almost obsessive tendency to follow, incrementally adding to existing body of science. And it is very okay. This is how we accumulate knowledge. But from time to time, somebody has to shake up a field and propose something new, a new perspective or a new framework. It is easier said than done, for the reason that theory once developed make us all its own prisoner. And it is very difficult to think differently, to develop new options, and to open new doors. And this is exactly what Professor Porter has done for many years. Second, it is one thing to have a good new idea, but it is completely different endeavor to develop this new idea into a precise and useful theory or framework. Because only then such a new idea becomes a powerful beacon for other researchers, something you can use, test, develop, and also criticize. Most researchers never develop such powerful theory. Some of us develop one in our lifetime, but very few develop several of them, as Professor Porter has done. His theories mentioned by my distinguished predecessors, like mobility barriers, diamond of national competitiveness, 5 forces, generic strategies, shared value, and others, have reshaped not only the field of strategic management, but also, which is very unique, adjacent fields. Finally, I would like to stress one element that was not very fashionable and welcomed in our discipline for many years: practical utility. Management, as Simon used to say, is an engineering science. It is a practical craft. We forgot about this for many years. And as researchers became more and more rigorous, it also has become less and less relevant in many cases. Nowadays, we have a change of heart and mind in the field. Nowadays, we are rediscovering relevance and we are debating it. But this was never the case with Professor Porter, researcher in scientific writing. His work was always, or has been always, theoretically relevant and rigorous and practically very useful at the same time. So it is the exemplar of what management research should be for us today and for future generations. In conclusion, I would like to say that rarely in our management disciplines we have such towering figures as Professor Michael Porter, and it makes the ceremony of granting him this honorary PhD degree by Poznaniu Economic University not only important, but also the natural thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Obui. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now approaching the most important moment of our ceremony. I would like to kindly request Professor Michael Porter and Professor Waldemar Frąckowiak. We will assist you with Professor Marian Gorynia to come forward to the podium. Then, I'd like to ask Professor Waldemar Frąckowiak to read the Latin text of the diploma.
I sit. Okay. I get to sit. Thank you. Thank you. That was very kind of you. Thank you. Albo tak.
O, bliżej, tak? Quod felix Faustum fortunatum quesit, summis auspiciis serenissime rei publice Polonorum, nos, Universitatis Studiorum Economicorum Poznaniensis, rector magnificus, et promotor rite constitutus, communi omnium ordinum consensu, in virum clarissimum ac doctissimum Michaelem Eugenium Porter, scientiarum economicarum professorem doctorem, instituti strategiae et competitionis in Harvardiana Schola Activitatis Economicae, bostoniensi, in civitatibus federatis Americae directorem, eminentissimum rerum economicarum investigatorem, multorum studiorum ac programmatum competitionis economiarum in compluribus mundi terris crescende, auctorem celeberimum, regiminum et gravissimorum economiarum moderatorum, in civitatibus federatis Americae, in America meridionali et centrali, in Europa et Asia, in Africa et Oceania, nec non corporationum Americanarum et internationalium consultorem indefessum. Quicum studiis suis inceptisque, tam scientiam de moderna competitione, atque multis eius applicationibus progrediendam, quamat societatis vitam emendandam plurimum valuiset, multis insignibus et ornamentis domesticis et extraneis decoratus est. Qui magnis et prosperis studiorum suorum successibus, in scientis economicis, precipue in microeconomia, atque in strategie et competitionis teoria, qua contemporanea competendi phenomena in economia, regionum, terrarum, totius mundi, nec non in vita sociali occurrentia applicata sunt. Magnam apud omnes habuit auctoritatem, atque de causa multarum societatum scientiarum, vel socius honoratus es factus. Qui ad theoriam nationum competitione prevalentium, specialiter et objectorum economicorum iunctorum theoriam, que sua visolerti et utilitate mundaman activitatis economice praxim, et publicam economiae strategiam adiuvit, mirum quantum attulit. Qui vite quoque publice particeps activus in cultus atque humanitatis generis humani progressione, non parvam habuit partem, doctoris honoris causa, nomen et honores iura et privilegia contulimus in eiusque rei fidem hasce litteras Uniwersytatis studiorum economicorum sigillo sanciendas curavimus. Datum Poznanie, die 11 mensis Marti, anno bismillesimo 11, Matthias Żukowski, hoc tempore rector, Marianus Gorynia, olim rector, Waldemarus Frąckowiak, promotor.
Congratulations and thank you.
And this
Congratulations, thank you.
This is a quote for you. We will put it on the table.
Okay, thank you very much. Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I hereby declare that the community of honorary doctors of Poznań University of Economics and Business has been joined by Professor Michael Porter. At this solemn moment, let's listen to Canticorum Jubilo by George Friedrich Handel, performed by the choir Musica Viva. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, and now let's give the floor to our Dr. Honoris Causa, Professor Michael Porter. Professor Porter, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, all I can say is, my gosh. It's a very moving experience. I can't tell you how much they mean to me and how motivating they are. I'm not finished, and whenever I have the privilege of an occasion like this, I'm motivated even further to carry on this work. The world still has a lot of issues, a lot of problems. We still have lots of people moving in different directions that aren't working. And it's these problems of economy and of society and of our institutions that are my passion to try to contribute to. And you've heard just a little bit of the kind of history of that work, but I thought you might be interested in my latest work. And I could have never dreamed ever that I would be working in this topic today. Do you know what the topic is? It's politics. I'm trying to understand why our political systems around the world don't function in advancing societies. And the United States is a wonderful, sad example of the ineffectiveness of government in solving the problems that our country faces, raising the standards of all of our citizens, addressing the most important challenges that we face. But interestingly enough, how do you think I look at politics? I look at it as a competition problem. How the parties compete, what they're trying to advance, which is inconsistent with what society needs, and the underlying reasons for that. I'm focused on the United States because we have such an egregious problem today, but the same concepts I think we can apply around the world. And I hope someday we can come back and talk about this issue in Poland. Poland has been a relatively sound political system most of the time, but it's a real struggle in this era that we're in, where there's so much populism and narrowness and lack of advancing societies that we have today. So let me thank, first of all of you. First of all, for offering me this wonderful recognition and for these amazing talks. where I was listening and I was remembering all the things that happened that led to each of the bodies of work that you heard about. I know you were ready to have those stop. There's a lot, but for me, it's all connected. All this work that you've heard about is all connected. It's based on a broader, more systemic view of competition and societies and progress and what we need to accomplish in order to make all those things better. I thought I would take just a moment today, and because of the limited time, and just talk about one topic that I think would be of interest to all of us. It certainly is to me and all Americans at this time. And that is the question of what's the role of business in society? This is a very important question because the world, as you all know, is full of problems, social problems, problems of health, problems of nutrition, problems of housing, problems of all kinds, water. There's never been a time in my lifetime that you can think of so many problems we have to solve. And traditionally, the way we've tackled those social problems is we've tackled them with two institutions. One, of course, is government. Government's job is to make society better. And that's what all governments try to do. We also have an entirely new sector that didn't exist 50 or 100 years ago, and that is the NGOs, the nonprofits, the thousands and thousands of organizations around the world that are trying to make society better in whatever field they're interested in. Some work on education, some work on children and having children have a good start in life. Some people work on violence, some people work on... There's nonprofits in every field all over the world today that we never had before. But I think if we're absolutely honest, we would recognize that although governments are trying, and nonprofits are also trying, and we couldn't do it without them, we're not succeeding. Many of these problems that we have all across the world, and the United States is a very, very good example of problems. All these problems that we have around the world are not getting better very fast. Despite massive investment of money, despite massive work on the part of many people in these institutions that have this role of trying to solve the social problems in our society. What we've come to understand is that we can't just go on this path. It's not working fast enough. It's not working well enough. We still have in all of our societies lots of problems to deal with. And that led me to ask the question of what's the role of business in society and social problems. We all know that business is our economic driver. We all know that businesses compete to increase prosperity, to create jobs, to raise the standard of living, to grow the GDP. Businesses played that role for a long, long time. But today, I think we're starting to ask the question, what should business's role be in society? And this is something at Harvard Business School that we're deeply interested in. We believe that business must contribute to the world, not just think of itself narrowly as doing business. And business has a lot of assets. Business has the most resources. Governments don't have enough money to deal with all these societal problems. NGOs need donations. They don't have enough money. They can help. They can make it better. They can try. But ultimately, we haven't found these fundamental solutions to the most important social problems that we face today. And business has the resources. Business has the managerial ability. Business has some assets that could be very powerful in attacking many of these social problems. But what we're finding is a very unusual and odd situation. And that is the trust in business is falling. I think there's too many people that think that business is the problem in many of our social issues, not a solution. And there's many businesses that are the problem because many companies do the wrong thing. They further their interests at the expense of society. So business is controversial. Many people see that profit is bad for society. That if a business is earning a profit, that's somehow taking away from society. We see business today trying very, very hard to do good. But society continues to question the role of business, the value of business. And despite the fact that businesses are so fundamental to any economy, this issue, I think, is really one of the issues of our time. How can we deal with all these problems we have? How can we leverage all the institutions we have to do that in a way that doesn't exclude business, but includes it in the process? And this is a body of work that I started a number of years ago when I started getting frustrated that we weren't making fast enough progress on health, on nutrition, on violence, on anything you can name. We're just not moving fast enough. What could business do? And if you look at the history, business has, in the past, been moving towards trying to impact society. But if we look at how, then we see there's been really a history here. Traditionally, the way most businesses have tried to benefit society is with philanthropy, with giving money, with making donations, volunteering their employees. We still need businesses to do that. Business has the resources. Those resources must be made available to other institutions to do powerful and important things that advance our societies. But what we've learned is that business itself, through giving money, does not make a very big impact. It's good, don't stop, but that's not a solution. That's just a step in the right direction. We see over time business has moved to another approach which is called corporate social responsibility. I know you've all heard of this. And the idea that business has a responsibility to engage with and do something about societal issues. And corporate social responsibility, as you see here, has to do with being ethically compliant with the rules and standards of society, being a good corporate citizen, being sustainable. Business shouldn't be cutting down the forest so we don't have no forest. Business should be using our resources sustainably, using resources well, not destroying the future for profit today. And basically what the corporate social responsibility movement is all about is trying to eliminate any negative impacts that business is having. Corporate social responsibility is about the tension, if you will, the tension between business's goals and society's goals. The traditional way that businesses approach society is to try to focus on these tensions. You know, business is criticized for poor ethical standards. Business is criticized for polluting. And it should be, because many companies do these things without really understanding the negative impact they're having. So business historically has focused on dealing with the tensions, dealing with the criticism, dealing with the areas where business is seen as behaving in ways that are not in the best interests of communities and societies. And that was a step forward. But what we find is, in any field, that reducing the negative doesn't solve the problem. We have to find a much more powerful role for business in the social issues that we face. And to think about that, the body of work that I've been doing over the last decade or so, which was mentioned briefly earlier, is this notion that when we think about making a profit, that's a powerful approach, but we have to make profit using the notion of shared value, not just value for the business. Now, what do I mean there? What that means is that business can actually work on social problems, but if it's going to be really important, it's not going to be important by giving a little money. It's not going to be really important by reducing bad behavior. It's going to be really important if it can innovate in meeting social needs, but do it with what's called a business model. And a business model means you make a profit. Ironically, what we've come to understand is the most powerful way business can affect society is work on addressing social problems, but doing it in a way that it can be profitable to address those problems. Let me give you an example. What if a company can come up with a product that dramatically reduces environmental impact? And that product is so good that it's bought by many customers, and that company makes money with that environmentally friendly product. Think about what happens then. If you can actually impact social problems with a profit, that means you're in a whole new world compared to government and NGOs. Because if a business is doing something that's profitable, it can scale. It can do it for 1 million people. It can do it for 100 million people. It can do it for 10 billion people. If an NGO is trying to deal with an issue, it can only deal with so many people with the donations that it gets. Pretty much it runs out of money. But business can be self-sustaining. If we can get business focused on real social needs and social deficits, then we have an opportunity for real solutions that can happen at large scale. So what we're starting to see is more and more companies are sort of embracing this idea of shared value. That there's many ways to make a profit. One way to make a profit is to make a profit at the expense of society. But what if we thought about making a profit while we're advancing important social needs? Wouldn't that be a different world? Wouldn't it be different if businesses were not just giving money and apologizing for all the bad things they've done in the past? What if businesses were innovating in dealing with nutrition, in improving health care, and so on, using water more efficiently? We're running out of water. What if businesses could find water-saving technologies and approaches to doing whatever they do? If we could start moving in that direction, we have an opportunity for real solutions that can grow and scale over time. Now, you might ask, well, but how's business going to do this? This isn't the job of business. And the other thing we found is that we often believe that improving social conditions reduces profitability. And what we found is actually it's the opposite. If we can improve water usage, have more nutritious products, avoid accidents, avoid pollution, if we can do those things, we actually make more profit. If we avoid pollution, we reduce waste. If we avoid pollution, we can actually operate more efficiently with fewer resources and needing fewer raw materials. So what we found is that we have to overcome a deep historical concept that's deeply rooted in economics. And that is, if a business is going to make more profit, that means it's probably going to impact society in a negative way. For many, many years, economists thought that it was profitable for a company to pollute. That's why we needed really strict environmental regulations. If we didn't have strict regulations, the company would pollute more because pollution would be cheaper. But it turns out that pollution is more expensive. If you're wasting resources, if you're not using water efficiently, if you don't have energy efficiency, you're actually driving up your cost. And what we found, and this was a great source of surprise and dismay to many economists, that the traditional framework that better social output meant less good economic output was wrong. And that started a very aggressive debate about this concept of shared value. What we determined, and I have very little time, so I can't tell you about all of it, but let me just tell you about shared value. How do we create shared value in a business? We create it when our product is meeting an important social need. Not an economic need, a social need. If we can do that, if we can provide products that are serving the needs of unserved customers, lower income people, people that don't have access to what most of us do, that's another way to create shared value. We can open up a new market that doesn't exist now, grow our company, make money, but also tremendously benefit society. The second way we can create shared value is we can think about differently how to run our business. And I've already talked about this, but traditionally we thought that thinking about social issues like environment and things like that weren't that important to thinking about how we run our business. Now we understand that actually some of our most important costs come from social deficits. Because we have social problems, that drives up our cost, and if we can help mitigate those problems, it drives down our cost. And thirdly, many companies think that my job is to make better what's in my company. I need to make my company better. Very few companies realize that they also need to make their business environment better, their community better. Because if companies invest in improving the community, the rules, the infrastructure, the education, the skills of the workforce, it's going to make them more effective as companies. It's going to help them recruit better people. It's going to allow them to be more efficient. So what's happened over the last 6 or 7 years? This idea was first introduced in 2011. I got a lot of negative feedback because it was going in the face of a lot of thinking about the difference between economic success and social success. It wasn't fun for a while. But as we get more and more evidence, we're learning more and more companies are realizing that their traditional way of thinking about social issues is just wrong. And how proud they will be as companies if they don't just think narrowly about economic success for themselves, but if they think about how to create economic success that actually matters, for the society and for the community. And that's starting to happen. Let me just go given the time, just show you one example that is probably the most powerful example anywhere in the world. And that's a company called Walmart. You've all heard of Walmart. It is now the world's largest company. It's been that way for a long time. It's fundamentally a discount, broadline discount business. They sell groceries and so forth. Most of you may not know that Walmart was one of the most hated companies in America. Everybody hated Walmart because Walmart put the small business, the small shopkeeper out of business. Walmart had a lot of power. They pushed the suppliers very hard to reduce the cost because their whole strategy was to be the lowest cost. Walmart was bitterly fought by all kinds of institutions in the society. I just wanted to show you what Walmart today looks like. Walmart's just not thinking about itself narrowly as a business. It's thinking of itself as, how do I fit in our society today and the challenges it faces? Walmart sells more organic, fresh, and healthy food than any other organization on the face of the earth at low prices. If you want to have organic food and eat healthy, go to Walmart. Your traditional grocery store is going to be much more expensive. Walmart puts its stores in communities that don't have other food stores. These are called deserts, food deserts, where there's no way for the residents to get healthy food. There's no other institutions there to sell it. Walmart now offers very low-cost financial services that much less costly than dealing with a bank. Because so many of our people don't have a good relationship with a bank, don't have the kind of financial support that they need to build their savings and build their success as a family. We have a dramatic healthcare problem in America. We just don't have enough access to primary healthcare. The healthcare is too high cost. It's really inaccessible to low-income people. Well, Walmart now offers very low-cost health services all across America, right there in the store. They were the one who pioneered that they would sell a generic drug for $4 a prescription. That's a low number. It was dramatic. The estimate is that they've saved consumers in America maybe $10 billion on buying their drugs. You know, Walmart believes in local sourcing. They think that's cheaper. They want their local community and their local businesses to be healthy. They understand that they'll be better and they'll have a better opportunity to grow if their local community and their local businesses are doing better. Walmart has reduced more energy as one company than almost all the other companies put together. Billions and billions and billions of dollars. They find that if they can run their trucks more efficiently, if they use less gasoline, if they use more renewable energy, their costs will go down, and they have gone down. Walmart understands that paying low wages to workers may not be cheap, may not be low cost. Because if those workers are not trained, if those workers quit all the time, and we have to replace them over and over again, that's not a very efficient way to run a company. Walmart has led America in creating good jobs and job trajectories for very, very low-income, low-skill workers. They were a pioneer in paying a living wage, even though they didn't have to. They understood that paying the living wage so somebody could live on the salary was going to produce a much better long-term outcome than if they were trying to just follow the minimum wage law. And people were just stuck and not able to progress as individuals. Walmart works with their suppliers to make sure that they're sustainable, that they're not destroying the environment, and they work in networks to try to actually improve sustainability, which is something that we care a lot about as a society. This is what a company can do. This one company, it's a big one, this one company in these areas has probably had more impact on every one of these issues. You know, environmental energy use, water use, packaging, waste, low-income wages, healthy eating. They've probably had more impact on these profoundly important social issues than all the governments combined. Why? Because they're doing it efficiently. They're doing it to make a profit, therefore they keep scaling it and growing it and improving it and getting better. And it's a self-reinforcing system. It's a system in which business becomes part of generation of social benefit and social welfare, even though business is supposed to be about profit. And it turns out that profit is critical to doing this well, because if you don't make a profit, you can't grow. And what business has been able to do is make massive impacts on many of our most important social issues in the United States because they have the sort of profitability to keep growing it and growing it and growing it and growing it. I found actually a couple of examples of this in Poland. I may not have all the data right, but I was drawn to two interesting initiatives here in this country where business is playing a critical role. You all know the company Danone. It's kind of a milk products, yogurts company. And Danone led the establishment of this partnership with, and I can't read, these are Polish words are hard for me, so I'm going to let you read it, to prevent undernourishment in young children. This is a big problem in your country. A lot of kids here just don't eat well enough to get the nutrition to actually have the best possible life experience growing up. This partnership, which Danone triggered, identified the way to get to those small kids is to give them what they already like, which is this wheat cereal. But let's fortify this and pack this with nutritional benefits. And the product that came out of this is something called Milky Start. I'd never heard of it. Hopefully you have. But this one product is going to have the biggest impact on childhood nutrition of anything that happens in this country. Because it's clever, it's targeting those kids, it's giving them what they want, it's doing good marketing, it's educating their parents, and it's enabling them at very low cost to have good nutrition. This is shared value. Apparently they've sold 50 million units of this product, and they keep taking the profit and investing in new products and new products and new products that will have a similar benefit. That's shared value. That's not a company narrowly maximizing profits, which is what economists have long said that companies should do. It's a company thinking more broadly about how to compete in a way that differentiates the company but creates shared value. Benefit not just from the company but also for society. Here's another Polish example. I didn't know about this. This is the Aviation Valley Cluster. A cluster is where you have a bunch of companies in the same field, all in the same place. And what we found is if you want to be productive and competitive, you want to build a cluster because it's much more efficient if you have other companies around you working with you to improve the product and the service. Here the kind of convening company was, if I remember correctly, was Pratt & Whitney. And they decided that, forming this Aviation Valley Association, bringing together a lot of little companies that existed in this area of Poland and getting them to collaborate to improve the business environment, to improve the skills, to improve the training, to improve the diversity, would be very, very powerful in helping aviation in this country grow and prosper, creating more jobs in that field, keeping young people from leaving the region because they couldn't find a job. Again, here's an example of shared value. This is a business that is benefiting from the better skills and the better available labor and the better environment and the better suppliers. The business is benefiting, it's making money, but it's making money in a way that benefits society more broadly. This is where we are going, I think, in the corporate world. It's taken a long time to get companies thinking this way, but it's happening. It's starting to happen around the world. It's happening. The investor now is looking at a company and asking the question, does this company benefit society, not just make money? And investors are investing in those companies where they see the shared value. So I think we're on a very, very interesting path, but I would hope that all of you here, as you think about your society, as you think about what has to happen and what needs to be done and what problems have to be solved, I would hope that we now think of this in the context of engaging business in being part of the solution, rather than seeing business as the one who gives the money or the one who is often seen as the problem. This is just an example of how, as we deeply understand economic and competition and competitiveness issues, we start to see different ways of approaching it that nobody really talked about before. But I think what we're learning is that this is how we actually advance society. And so hopefully, this work is now global. Whether we can do this in politics, I don't know. It's really hard. Because people in politics, who are the people in politics out for? They generally are out for their party. They want their party to do well. They're not judged on whether the country does well because of what their party does. In our country, we have Democrats and Republicans, and they're like opposites of each other in what they believe. We haven't passed in America any important legislation on any of our most important issues in probably 20 years. Because if one party puts it forward, the other party blocks it. Because their ideology isn't the same. And too much of politics is about ideology. Too much about politics is how do I win more seats for my party, not about how can I collaborate with the other parties to actually advance the country in a way that we think will actually succeed. So next time I'm here, which I hope is not as long as since the last time I was here, this will be an interesting question to see how we're doing. Because all over the world, political systems are failing, democracies are failing. This, I think, is the problem of this age. We're going to work very hard on it, but ultimately, this gives you just an example of what I believe that we scholars are obligated to do. We're not obligated to write papers for ourselves. Those are easy. A lot of scholars really are writing to their peers, and the people who read their papers are people like them. I think we scholars are obligated to connect with what's happening in the world and with what we can do about it and what we can contribute to it. And that's been my mantra forever. Part of the reason for that is I started out as an engineer, an aeronautical engineer. And engineers are about solving problems, making things work. I was an aeronautical engineer. If the plane doesn't fly, you're not doing very well. Writing papers that don't make the airplanes better are not contributing. And I just kind of got that ingrained in my very being, you know, as I was getting my aeronautical engineering degree. And then I went to Harvard Business School. And Harvard Business School is all about how to manage well, how about building a great company. And with those two things as background, when I got my economics PhD, I was just looking at the world differently than most people that are trained in economics, and they study the theory and the methods and the models and the mathematics that have been growing over the years as we've gotten more sophisticated about economic concepts. But fundamentally, many people in academia are fundamentally about advancing their discipline, not advancing the society in which the discipline should have a positive impact. So those of you in the room who are professors, particularly you young professors, let's change that. Let's make scholars and professors more impactful on the world in which we live. Let's have professors no longer talking to each other. Let's have professors engaging in the world, in the fields that they're interested in, finding out how it really actually works. It's messy. It doesn't fit the model. And I think the more we can get our great brains that are teaching at our great universities like this one, thinking this way and doing work this way, I think the faster we'll start to see a society advance and the more important universities ultimately will be. So thank you very, very much from the bottom of my heart for this wonderful recognition. I'm going to go back and keep trying to do it again. And we'll see if I'd succeed. Thank you.
Professor Potter, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presence and for the speech. Questions and answers will come next time. Next time you have just mentioned. We very much hope for next time, especially because now, as our honorary doctor, you belong to our community. Once again, thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, before we close, I would like to invite you to a short concert of our choir, Musica Viva. We will hear 4 songs, Come Again by John Dolan, An Irish Blessing, adapted by James Moore, Concinamus Omnes, music by Andrzej Koszewski, and To Be or Not to Be by Leo Matheson. Musica Viva.
Oh
Many thanks to the artists for the concert and the whole performance during our meeting. The choir Muzyka Viva of the Poznań Uniwersytet of Economics and Business, conducted by Professor Marek Gandecki. Once again, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, our ceremony is coming to an end. I'm closing the extraordinary meeting of the Senate, the ceremony of awarding the honorary doctorate to Professor Michael Porter. I would like to thank you all for coming, for joining us on this very special day, and thank you to all the people involved in making it happen. Thank you to to our whole team. Thank you very much. And now I would like to invite you all to a glass of wine and refreshments in room 111 on the lower floor, just below this auditorium. Thank you very much.